So this is Mr. Kopitsky, and we're going to take a look at the executive branch. The first thing we want to do is talk you through some of the formal and informal requirements for being president of the United States. Here's a little quote by Harry Truman that I think is relevant. I don't know whether you fellows ever had a load of hay fall on you, but when they told me yesterday what happened, I felt like the moon and stars and the planets all had fallen on me. This is Harry Truman describing how he felt after FDR passed away. And the idea here is, wow, this is a tough job. There are a lot of responsibilities, and the American people expect certain traits and characteristics of their president to be able to fulfill all the tasks that are before him or her. As Harry Truman said, the presidency of the United States carries with it a responsibility so personal as to be without parallel. No one can make decisions for him, even the closest to him. Never know all the reasons why he does certain things and why he comes to certain conclusions. To be president of the United States is to be lonely, very lonely at times of great decisions. Now, informal, okay? It's a heavy, heavy job with a lot of responsibilities. We'll look at some of those informal qualities and discuss them in a minute, but let's talk about what the Constitution says. These are formal qualities. Formal is written down. In a certain sense, they're non-negotiable. You have to be these things to be president. Age, you must be 35 years old. Residency, you have to be a resident of the United States for 14 years. So if I go work in England for Ford Motor Company for 5 years and I'm living in an apartment, and then I come back to the United States and I'm elected to Congress for 5 terms, then I run for president. I can't run for president because I haven't lived in the United States consecutively for 14 years. Military bases and embassies count as U.S. soil, so that would be okay. But I have to be within the United States for 14 years before I can run for president. I have to be natural born. Some controversy regarding what that means, but most legal scholars would argue that means that you don't take a test to become a citizen. Your parents are U.S. citizens, and when you are born, you are given U.S. citizenship at birth. You're not required to take some sort of formal exam. Length of term. You can be elected twice and twice only because of the 22nd Amendment. You can serve an additional 2 years if you are the vice president and the president dies before more than 2 years of his term are up. So you can serve as vice president for 2 years, president dies right at that 2-year mark, you could serve for another 2 years and be elected twice. So the longest anyone can be in office is 10 years. This is a good requirement, I think, in a certain sense. Even though FDR served for 4 terms during the 1930s and 40s, during a time of great crisis, I don't think we want to go the way of Russia, where the Constitution is continually modified to allow someone to remain in power indefinitely. The presidential term, this is the 22nd Amendment that I was describing. This was enacted after FDR was elected 4 times. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice, and no person who has held the office of president for more than 2 years, or of a term, to which some other person was elected president, shall be elected to the office of president more than once. 22nd Amendment, 1951. I was distracted by something else I was doing. So those are the formal requirements of the presidency, okay? The formal requirements of the presidency. You can't be elected 5 times. You can't be 20 years old, okay? But now we get to informal. Informal qualifications are a little different. They're not written down. They're kind of expectations that people have, but they're not necessarily set in stone requirements, and these might change over time. So presidential requirements informal. Government experience. You're probably not going to be president of the United States if you're a high school teacher and have no other experience, like me, okay? You need to serve the public in some way as governor, as an elected official, as a representative, as a senator, or as a high up in the military, for example, a general. Grant was never elected to a political position, but he was a general in the military, as was Eisenhower. Eisenhower also managed a university. Clearly, with Donald Trump having business experience, if you're the CEO of a large corporation and you have managerial experience on that level, that's probably suitable to be president as well. But you have to have some sort of managerial experience and some sort of government experience that you bring to the presidency. You're probably going to need some financing. You're going to need the backing of a party. Maybe you could be independently wealthy. Ross Perot was someone who ran as an independent. Donald Trump ran as a Republican and had a lot of his own financing, but also party backing. So yeah, it's very expensive, and you're going to need to have views that appeal to donors and the ability to get donors. Acceptable political beliefs. This means that you fall somewhere on that liberal to conservative spectrum that Americans will be okay with. Now, obviously, liberals won't vote for a conservative and vice versa. If you are a conservative that says, hey, you know what, we need to lower taxes to grow business, and we need to take a look at Roe v. Wade because that's against the traditional right to life. Okay, you'll be elected by conservatives. That's within the ballpark. If you say as a conservative, we need to rewrite the Constitution, eliminate the Bill of Rights, and set up concentration camps for anyone who disagrees with us, probably not going to work. If you're on the left and you say we should raise minimum wage, okay, that's in the ballpark. That's what's would be considered an acceptable belief on the left. If you're on the left and say we need to abolish the military, tax all income at 100% over $100,000, and abolish all property and have it owned communally, you're probably not going to be elected either. So anything too far right and too far left is going to be out of bounds. You probably won't have beliefs that are acceptable enough to be elected. Acceptable personal characteristics. Wow. There's so many here and so many things to think about. Here's Kennedy Nixon, right? Look at Kennedy, young, looks healthy. Nixon wasn't feeling well at the debate. Healthy is something we want in our president. You want the president not to be sick, not to be ill. You want to, or her to project a position of physical strength, physical fitness, physical competence. And clearly presidents have done that over the years. Even, Clinton would jog and stop at McDonald's. Reagan was known to be pretty fit. So you want your president to be healthy, and we would be concerned if they had serious mental or physical issues. That would be a problem as far as I think the electorate. Personal characteristics. We want them to be decent, honest. We want them to be hardworking. We don't want our president to say, yeah, I'm going to get elected, then I'm just going to relax. I'm really not going to work that hard. That probably wouldn't be good. There are things that have changed over time, too. At one time, divorce would have been something that would have been maybe problematic for a president. We've had divorced presidents over time, Reagan, etc. Drug use as a president would have been unheard of, in the 1950s or 60s. Mental illness was something that precluded people in the past from being running on a ticket. So times change, and some of those personal characteristics evolve. But we do look for certain things between the lines, either something that the president will project or something that they may say or believe. We probably wouldn't necessarily vote, I think, at this time for someone who said that they were an atheist. I think we, at this time, still like our presidents to have a spiritual grounding, although 100 years from now that may not be the case, as those acceptable personal characteristics do change. So again, informal requirements are things we're looking for: experience, health, competence, a background that, although they may made a few mistakes, they are generally decent, honorable people now, and they will project that in the presidency. These are all things that we look for in a president. And you may think of other informal characteristics or, informal characteristics that you look for in a president. Maybe there are certain things that don't matter as much to you as they do to someone else. Maybe we elect someone who was, for example, in the 1940s and 1930s, Franklin Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt had polio as a child and was in a wheelchair most of the time. He would be up on occasion and things, but most of the time he was in a wheelchair. And he often gave speeches from his wheelchair or sort of propped up on a podium. Whenever he did, he was just shown with photos from the head up to try to exclude the wheelchair. That was a big deal back then. It was projecting the image of weakness, people thought. Maybe not today as much. Maybe today that would be something that would be fine. As someone with a disability, then they wouldn't try to hide it or obscure it as much as Franklin Roosevelt tried to do back in the day. So those are what informal qualities and formal qualities are. And I hope you enjoyed this. There's a lot to think about in our upcoming election, and we're going to take you through a bunch of videos and a bunch of presentations that deal with the power of the presidency, the formal and informal, including a bunch of relevant, timely commercials. So enjoy.